Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today for our first steering group led webinar of the academic year. So my name is Claire Donaldson and I'm a programme coordinator and the Enactus UK lead for the University Advisor Network. I also have Gary Wood from the University of Sheffield on the line, who is both an experienced university advisor working with Enactus Sheffield and a dedicated member of the steering group as well. I will shortly be handing you over to Gary to present today's webinar on the topic of linking Enactus with your university's strategic plan. But first, I'd like to take a few moments to provide you with an update on the steering group and to introduce you to its new members. So the steering group is an engaged, diverse and supportive group of university advisors, or UAs, who are equipped to represent the Enactus UK University Advisor Network, steer the direction of the UA programme developments, help develop UAs to support their own teams and promote Enactus at their institution. The steering group have worked in partnership with Enactus UK to outline 8 objectives for this academic year that we're really excited to share with you and to also get your feedback on as well. These will be made available in the December newsletter, as will a link to a new steering group webpage on the Enactus UK website with a short bio of each member and some further details on how you can engage with them, access support, advice and guidance in your role. Okay, so as you can see, there are 6 steering group members at the moment. There's Phil, Gary and Bonnie, who are all returning members. Phil is also an Enterprise Educators UK board member and chairs the Graduate Entrepreneurship Network. Bonnie is the former chair of the steering group, and we do thank her for all of her support and commitment to the network so far. And I'd like to announce Gary as the new chair of the steering group. So I'd like to welcome him into the role and wish you every success with this. Mo, Elaine and Callum are all new steering group members. Mo has actually kindly offered to host the University Advisors Summit, which we've got coming up in January at Aston University. Elaine is a university advisor to a rookie team and also benefits from insight of a new university advisor as well. And Callum has a breadth of knowledge about Enactus, having been through it as a student, also as part of the Enactus UK staff team previously, and now supporting Enactus in a UA capacity. So I'm absolutely delighted really to have them all on board, and I'm very much looking forward to working with them going forward as the representatives of the network. I'm just going to take a little moment just to mention that we've obviously got that University Advisor Summit coming up in January. It is in Birmingham. Based on the poll that I sent out and the feedback we got on what dates worked for other people and where those people geographically were located. So it'll be absolutely fantastic to see you there. Do look out for the email which came around yesterday. And of course, if you do have any questions or want any further details, then do put them in the chat box, or of course just drop me an email afterwards. Okay, but without much further ado, I'm going to hand over to Gary Wood, our new steering group chair, to introduce today's webinar topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire, and hi everyone. It's great to be here and to be able to host this webinar, but also to have had the opportunity to become the chair of the steering group. And I'm really looking forward to working with all of you over the coming years to shape things and continue to take things forward and make sure that we're providing as much support and guidance as we can in your roles as university advisors. And we started that process over the summer with the survey that Claire sent around, and we've got some really useful feedback from that's informed the objectives that we've set for the coming year, and also helped to shape some of the topics that we wanted to put into these webinars. And that's really what's informed today's session, is that one of the questions that I've regularly been asked and that we saw coming through in that survey is about how we can secure within our institutions senior levels of support for Enactus and have kind of senior champions for the programme. I think one of the ways that we've been able to do that successfully in Sheffield is by really trying to align what we say about Enactus and the way that our Enactus team is presented with our wider university strategic plan. So it's our 5-year plan for the university. So I wanted to kind of share this approach. I could probably talk about this for the whole hour, but I do want this to be an interactive session. So my plan is really to talk about why this is important and how this can be helpful, and then to show you some examples from the Sheffield strategic plan of where and how we've made those alignments. And what the outcomes of that have been. And then after that, to have some discussion where you might share your own thoughts, any observations about how you've used your strategy within your university to promote Enactus, or any questions that you have. So as we go through, there is a chat facility in Zoom, and if you've got any questions as we go along, then please do post them there. And Claire's very kindly agreed to just monitor that and let me know if any questions come up as we go along. But otherwise, we'll have the main discussion and questions after I've kind of introduced things with this case study of Sheffield. So I think an obvious question to start with is, why is alignment with the strategic plan important? And I think for us, what we'd say is that a strategic plan gives you a window into your university's priorities. They're often created as collaborative documents that involve your senior team, but also a wide consultation around the institution, and that feeds into then kind of setting out what those priorities will be for the period of time that the plan runs for. As well as being kind of collaborative and collected from across the institution, and so high priorities for lots of people working across your university, you can also be fairly sure that there'll be areas of focus for your leadership team. And so aligning what you're saying about Enactus with those goals and those priorities can help to really bring attention to Enactus within your university. It's also the case, I think, that strategic plans, as they're being developed and redeveloped, are increasingly likely to reflect the wider educational agenda, with things like the Teaching Excellence Framework and the Knowledge Excellence Framework. We'll all be familiar with those to various extents, but I think what the strategic plan can do is really put your institutional flavour and wrapping around those, and so really help you to understand what they might look like within the context of your institution, and so how you can align with those in a way that speaks in the language that your institution is speaking. And I think that the bottom line then is that by aligning what you're saying about Enactus and the way that you operate the Enactus team with the strategic priorities of the university, then you can demonstrate to those senior people who support you on that actually you're helping them to deliver their priorities and their objectives. And so it's a kind of win-win situation where you can secure the support that you want, but you can also do that by showing that you're supporting the direction of your institution. So when you've made this alignment, what I hope that might give you is an opportunity to inform your internal Enactus communication strategy. So by that, what I mean deciding what are the key messages that you want to share about your team within your institution when you have successes, for example, in competition or in an ITC or in a particular project. Then actually being able to talk about that in a language that aligns those successes and the process that the students have gone through with the strategy can help you to really get traction in terms of that message being cascaded and shared widely. It will also allow you to make strong business case for support of Enactus because you can articulate that not just in terms of your objectives for the programme and for your students, but in terms of the wider objectives of the institution and how you're helping to meet those. We've certainly seen that can help to create opportunities for funding because we've got, at a very senior level. So people within our university executive board who have discretionary budgets to support projects have actually been willing to fund aspects of Enactus work from those budgets because they can see how we're delivering against the priorities that are within their portfolios. And it also gives you a way to engage your senior team on a more practical level. So when we've had events and we've wanted to invite people from the senior team, again, aligning that with the plan and being able to articulate the value to the university of that commitment has been really empowering in terms of securing that support. So that's really the rationale for why I think this is a useful way of securing senior support within your university. And obviously a starting point to get that is going to have to be to look at your strategic plan and to start to look at where are the possible links in the language of the plan, the priorities that are set out in the plan, and what you think are important within the context of Enactus. And I think that these 4 areas that I've listed on the slide are really areas that are worthy of the initial exploration to try and find those areas. So what does the strategy say about learning and teaching? You might look for things about engagement with community or with partners, or connecting student learning so that it goes beyond the classroom. And obviously Enactus does that. And so if you can find those kind of objectives within the plan, then they're a good place to make the links. You might look too for employability or language and descriptions around student development. And again, then link that to how Enactus is enhancing student employability. And giving students access to opportunities that are unique to the Enactus network, like some of the sponsor institutions that specifically look to recruit Enactus students. You might look at what it says around research and impact, and that can be a really useful one if you can find links there, because I think often there's not really an expectation that students will be contributing to impact in terms of research. So they might be doing research, particularly if you're in a research-led institution, but it's not expected that they're necessarily taking that out and making impact in the world with that research. And actually Enactus can be a way to do that, and so give you a unique angle on being able to show how your students are contributing to the mission of your institution. And then if you've got international projects or you're exploring international projects in the context of your Enactus team, then you might look for what your strategic plan says about internationalization or operating in a global context. And as I've said with research and impact, this kind of final bullet point here is it's useful to look for where is your Enactus team making an impact that meets the plan, but that wasn't something that your senior team was expecting to be delivered by students. So where we've been able to show our students going and working internationally, or taking research from in the university and applying that through knowledge exchange to bring about positive impact, then it's added a new dimension to the stories that we can tell around how we're achieving the strategic plan that we set out. So I'm not going to go through this in too much detail, but I did just want to then, kind of having given you that background, think a little bit about what this looks like in practice in Sheffield. And the way I'm going to do this is to show you the 5 areas. So we have, within our current strategic plan, there are 5 interconnected themes that you see here on the slide. So education and student experience, research and its impact, strategic partnerships, our place locally and globally, and our public responsibility. And within each of these sections, where this is set out in the plan, there are a number of challenges that are listed that are the kind of rationale, I suppose, for why these things are important to us, what challenges we want to try and solve. And then separate from that, the strategy for how we're going to try and address those challenges. So across these 5 themes, I've just pulled out over the next few slides some examples of what the strategy says, and I'll comment a little bit on how we've been able to show impact against that strategy with our Enactus work. It's important to say that what you'll see on the next few slides are all the words that are taken directly from the strategic plan. So I haven't reframed this to make it Enactus specific. This is just the wording that was extracted directly from that plan. So in terms of education and student experience, one of the challenges that's identified there is about maximizing employability, innovation, and globally recognized graduate skills. And the strategy that underpins that then talks about innovation in terms of internationalization, building stronger links with employers, and giving students the experience of live projects and challenges, and further embedding entrepreneurship and innovation into teaching and learning. And so hopefully it's quite obvious already from this how the work that your Enactus teams are doing might be contributing to this kind of initiative. So certainly in terms of our internationalization and international impact, our students that are running international projects are definitely being innovative in that context, looking at problems in the countries that they're working in, and then designing and creating new solutions, often drawing on expertise that comes from our academic staff. So going out and consulting with academic staff to access research expertise, and then using that to create those innovations. Building links with employers, that happens obviously through the Enactus network and through the fact that we have our advisory group and Enactus business advisors. So there's an opportunity there for students to engage with employers, but also the opportunity for them to do real projects and engage with real challenges. And through that, we're able to embed entrepreneurship and innovation in our teaching and learning context. And I think it can be helpful to think then about what do we actually mean by learning and teaching, because it would be easy when you read this to take a narrow definition of that and to think of it as the kind of core learning and teaching that we offer through our courses and programs. But actually the way that we've interpreted that in responding to this strategy is more holistically. And so we very much see the Enactus program, even though it's extracurricular, as being a part of that learning and teaching agenda. So our second area of focus is research and its impact. And one of the challenges that's identified here are the global challenges of sustainability in food, energy, and urban development, as well as the demands of a globalized economy. And within the strategy, what we say is that we want to address that by recognizing that global challenges can be effectively addressed through interdisciplinary and translational research. And again, I think if you think about the kinds of projects that our students work on, and the fact that they sometimes go and consult with academic staff, sometimes they're directly taking work that's been created by academic staff, maybe utilized to deliver impact in the UK or in a small number of places overseas, and then expanding that by using that knowledge to make an impact through a project wherever in the world they happen to be operating. And so students directly delivering impact around research through the projects that they are creating and delivering. Strategic partners. So I split this slide into two because I think there are more challenges here that are particularly relevant for the Enactus context. So the challenges that the plan sets out are around understanding difficult problems that require interdisciplinary and collaborative approaches and the delivery of timely and effective solutions in the real world. Opportunities to work with our strategic partners to identify opportunities for students to learn and through that to benefit scholarship and help our partners to achieve their aims as well. So something there around working in collaboration with our partners in a way that's mutually beneficial. And then delivering partnerships that are responsive to the communities that we serve locally, nationally and globally. And the strategy around this says that we will ensure that our partnerships have demonstrable and sustainable purpose. And we see that where our Enactus teams are going out and securing project partners that will help them with the delivery of their projects, whether they're local or national or international. And that will focus on collaboration in areas of strength, promoting teaching and research activities that could not otherwise happen. And because Enactus is extracurricular, it really gives us an opportunity to do that because we're not constrained by the kind of normal requirements of a curriculum-based program. Our students have the flexibility to go out and build projects that they design and that they're passionate about in areas that they care about, and so give us opportunity to reach and work with a broader range of partners than otherwise might be possible. Our place locally and globally. So again, two challenges here around maintaining our roots within the local and national community and a commitment to improving the lives of local people. So our students are doing that through their local projects. So some of you might be familiar, for example, in Sheffield with the project that we have called Motion, where our students are tackling social isolation and looking at health and well-being in aging. And they're doing that within the local community. Again, aligning that at the same time with the research that we have going on around aging in the university. And then balancing the tensions between local and global to bring benefit to all our communities, which is then feeds into our strategy about continuing to develop international opportunities for students in research, volunteering and international experience. And here, I mean, obviously Enactus is enabling our students to do this for themselves. They're able to identify opportunities that they want to solve. And really that's the power, I think, within the Enactus program, is that students are investing in learning and developing their leadership capabilities and their knowledge and skills in social enterprise through doing projects that they're passionate about. And they commit, thousands of hours every year to volunteering in that context. And so it's a powerful way of engaging them in being able to help us to meet this aspect of our institutional strategy. And then finally, the fifth area is about public responsibility. So the challenge that's set out here is that we need to make sure that we're delivering and demonstrating public value through, in the strategy, working closely with our city and region to support and sustain mutually beneficial activities, and creating a university-wide culture of volunteering. And again, that kind of aligns with what I said in our place locally and globally around opportunities for students to do volunteering that appeals to them, and to do that at different scales. So whether it's international or more local, where they're kind of dealing with problems at different scales and in different localities. So I hope that was quite, I mean, I'm conscious I've gone through that quite quickly, but I don't want to really dwell too much on the specific details of the Sheffield plan, but I wanted to just give you some sense of how you might use a plan and where you might identify these links and alignments, and then think about how you can tell your Enactus story in a way that aligns with those and demonstrates that you're work with Enactus, although it might be extracurricular and perhaps not a core activity within your university because it's an extracurricular additional program, nevertheless delivers real value. And often, as I've said about research and students engaging in research, it delivers value that it's really difficult to get in any other way. And that can be a unique angle on why you want to champion Enactus and why you want your senior colleagues to champion Enactus within your institution. So what's this kind of alignment enabled for us? Well, I think it was really powerful in enabling us to get recognition for Enactus right the way up to university executive board level. Our President and Vice Chancellor is really aware of the work that Enactus does and is very supportive of that. And so it's really helpful to have, our VC, as obviously the most senior person in our university, really kind of in tune with and supportive of what Enactus is doing, because that filters down through other levels. And he also becomes a champion and advocate for the work that we do. It's led to financial support for the team. So when we've had particular startup costs are often a challenge for the team when they want to go and do a project overseas. And obviously it's not a sustainable project when it first launches, it has to get off the ground. And so being able to access some funding internally, and we've been able to do that directly from the President and Vice Chancellor's office, really because we were able to demonstrate those ways in which the projects that the students were doing were going to add a new angle on the delivery of the strategic plan. It's also helped us through that awareness to develop and maintain security for the team throughout a process of restructuring of enterprise provision within our university. So over the last couple of years, there's been lots of restructuring going on in Sheffield in terms of support for learning and teaching, and particularly support for enterprise and entrepreneurship. And throughout that, we were able to keep championing Enactus and make sure that we protected Enactus and that it wasn't affected or in the worst case, lost through this restructuring, because there was that senior level buy-in to seeing that this added real value that went beyond just being a project or a program for students, and was something that had real value to our institution in being closely aligned with and delivering our priorities. That's more recently led, as a result of that restructuring, to investment in new office space. So we're just in the process of renting a new kind of co-working space within the city of Sheffield, close to the university campus, and it's surrounded by other entrepreneurs. That will be a space that we're going to allow our Enactus team to use and have as an office space, so that they've got a place where they can work and come together and store their materials and have a space that they own to operate within. And it's also led to the inclusion of Enactus directly within the strategic plan. So under our previous strategic plan, when I was first involved with our Enactus team in about 2012, 2013, we'd aligned things with that older plan, and then we've moved into a new plan for the 5 years running through to 2021. And within the documentation around that plan, the kind of glossy brochure that sets it out and that's circulated around our institution, Enactus is included there as a case study, and I can show you that or an extract from that briefly on this slide. This is directly with this quote from somebody who was in our senior team, explaining why Enactus is important and showing that Enactus has been a useful way of delivering against that plan. So I'm going to stop talking at that point. I think you might have observations about the way that this has worked, or that you might use this in your own institution, or you might have questions around what you've heard me say about how we do this in Sheffield, or how you can align things, and then move from that alignment into communicating that in ways that secures that buy-in. So I'll stop there. I'll see whether any questions. Claire, have we had any questions through on the chat?
Hi, yeah, we've had one through from, I'm not sure if it's so much a question, but it's from Chris Moon, and it says, we have a new VC starting soon, and I hope this will be a good opportunity to get more senior leadership support. However, if I had one or two of the Enactus partners companies on board, local to Northwest London, this would make a real difference. So I suppose that's one that I can discuss. So in terms of Enactus partner, business advisors, how that might work is, as the team develops and they reach a point where a business advisor would be particularly useful for a project or to guide and advise the team, at that point we would be looking to sort of introduce them. As Middlesex are a rookie team at the moment, I think that we're still in the process of assigning business advisors to the team. But absolutely, I agree that it would make a difference. If anybody else has any questions, feel free to write those in the chat box. Equally, you're more than welcome to unmute yourself and to kind of open those out to discussion.
I think it's worth saying as well that we're particularly keen to understand and to know whether other university advisors are already working in this area and using their strategic plan to communicate about their teams, because one of the priorities that we've got as the steering group for this year is to try and develop a more accessible and more developed bank of case studies of practice, because we're really conscious that across the advisor network we've got very different levels of experience. So we've got some people who are very new in role and other people who've been Enactus advisors for a long time. And so we're hoping to build up a bank of case studies that can be accessible and tagged with different topic areas, so that there'll be a useful resource for people, whatever their experience of being an advisor, to go to and to draw on. And so one of those could be around using strategy within your institution to secure buy-in. And we'd like, if we do that, to have input and ideas from a range of different institutions, rather than it just being from the institution that writes it.
Hi, I've had another chat message through from Chris Moon. He says, I might have missed whether Sheffield presented Enactus at a staff conference. This could work well at Middlesex.
Yeah, so actually, yeah, that's a great point, Chris. When we, particularly in 2014, when Sheffield was fortunate to win the UK national competition and then go to Beijing to present and represent the UK, that created a great opportunity then for us to showcase what Enactus was doing on the big stage within the university. And so at our annual Learning and Teaching conference, we actually had a kind of, a presentation where the Enactus team gave their World Cup presentation to that audience of staff from across the university, but then also a panel discussion where there was opportunity for staff to ask them questions and hear about their experiences through the programme, with a particular focus on what they learned and how they developed through it. I think to some extent that was possible because we'd already got the senior level support. So actually having already talked to our senior team about the work that we were doing with Enactus and aligned it with the strategic plan, they were already aware of it, and so were very supportive of us bringing it into that conference format and sharing it more widely. But yeah, absolutely. I think if you can find opportunities to get your Enactus team talking to an audience of staff from across the university, and particularly if you can help them to do that in a way that really demonstrates how what they're doing aligns with the department and university priorities, then I think that's important and useful. I think one of my first experiences of being involved with Enactus was that I found it very confusing initially to understand what the program was about. So this was back in the days when before it was even called Enactus, it was when it was SIFE. And my first encounter with it was a student who came to me and said, I need to try and raise £3,000 to go to Nigeria in 2 weeks' time. And he explained that that was because he was working on this project through SIFE that was tackling sex trafficking. And so that was what I thought SIFE was. It was about, this kind of project. And then a bit later, I talked to another student who told me a completely different story about a jam making business. And I just couldn't in my head connect those two things together. And I think then what it took was for me to start to kind of drill into what is SIFE in more detail, to really start to understand that it's a framework that allows students to run these kinds of social impact projects and at the same time to develop their leadership skills. And once I understood that, then hearing about all these different projects from different students suddenly made sense, because they were just those students' particular kind of instantiation of their work through the program. But I think that sometimes becomes a challenge to communicating your message and to communicating about what Enactus is within the context of your institution, because students will communicate about what they're really passionate about, and that will be their projects and the things that they're working on. But they sometimes, I think, miss the need to wrap that within the broader context of, they're doing this project in the framework of Enactus, and what that Enactus program is about. And it's really at that level that I think you can start to get engagement from staff, where they see this as about student employability. It's about giving students the opportunity to develop key transferable and professional skills that they might be trying to develop too through their curricula, and about really connecting students with their agency, I guess, as people who can use the knowledge that they're gaining through their degree and make a positive impact with that in the world. So I think that's the role that you can play as an advisor, is in helping the students to think about, yes, focus on the projects, and yes, talk very passionately about the projects that you're engaged with, but how do we frame that in a message that's consistent and coherent, that really helps people understand what Enactus is and what the value of Enactus is.
I've had another question from Debbie Horton at University of Manchester. It says, hello, I'd be interested to know what people's views are on how beneficial this approach would be when your team doesn't have huge success stories to share with senior leaders. So I suppose really that's one for Gary, but that also goes out to everyone else on the call as well, whether you have any insight into that.
So I'll offer an answer on that, but I think different people might have different perspectives. So do please feel free to either post in the chat, or if you want to let us know in the chat that you'd like to unmute yourself, we can give you a slot so that you can actually speak to the group as well. So I think it's possible to show engagement with this kind of strategy regardless of the scale of the projects that your students are doing. It just might be that you'll choose to focus on different aspects of the strategy. So for example, we've been able, as I said in my presentation, we've been able to show that our students are engaging in research and making impact in research, and address that strand of our strategic plan. If you haven't got projects that are really well developed at the moment and that are delivering that kind of impact, then obviously you might find that a more difficult area to address. But even at the kind of lowest level that students could be operating, you'd be able to link this to issues around learning and teaching, development of employability skills, connecting students with thinking about how they'd operate in a professional environment, teaching students to think and behave more independently, and recognizing that they can use the knowledge that they've got to make an impact, and so to be enterprising and spot opportunities, and then use their ideas to make things happen and bring about solutions to problems or to respond to those opportunities. So I think it's a matter of focus and emphasis, really, in terms of looking at where your team is, and then going through your plan and looking at how you can align what your team is doing with the areas that you can, where you can show that they're making impact or that they're delivering against that plan. But then I think perhaps also being aspirational, and being able to have those conversations to say, we're meeting these areas, but there is evidence that we could meet these other areas of the strategic plan, and perhaps to point to case studies like the ones that the steering group is hoping to publish, that will show how this is happening in other institutions. And that might then help you to make the case to your senior team that actually, with more support, with more funding, whatever that support or resourcing that you might want looks like, you could move this to the next level and so be contributing in those other ways too. So I don't necessarily think it's just about showing where you are now, but also about being able to communicate the potential of Enactus in a way that speaks to those priorities that are a focus for your senior team.
Okay, Gary, so you've got an invitation from Chris Moon at Middlesex saying, is Gary willing to come to Middlesex to share the slides slash discuss with senior leaders in 2020?
Absolutely, yeah, very happy to come and do that, Chris. It would be a pleasure to come and share this and talk to your team about Enactus. I think I'm really passionate about Enactus and the work that it does, because I see the great benefit that it brings to our students, and I'm through this kind of work starting to be able to share that benefit with our senior team, and so then bring further benefit back to our students. So yeah, absolutely, really willing to do that, and perhaps we could be in touch by email after this conference call to exchange details, and then we can fix something up.
Okay, well, we'll stay on the line for a few more minutes. If anyone has any further questions, do feel free to unmute yourself or to put them in the chat box. But of course, if you need to jump off, then that's completely fine. I'd just like to thank everyone who's joined us today. I think this is quite a good turnout. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day as well. And I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible at the University Advisor Summit in January.
I'd just like to echo that, Claire, as well. I think it's those summits are always a great opportunity to bring together Enactus advisors from across the UK with different levels of expertise and experience, and just to kind of build the network. And I think one of the valuable things about them is obviously the work that we do on the day and the topics that we share and discuss, but also just that opportunity to build your network and know more of the Enactus UK advisors, so that when you have questions, you can go out and talk to people who have expertise and access that expertise at the right time. So please do join us if you're able to in Birmingham for that event.
Thanks, Gary, for the webinar today. It was really, really valuable, and I'm sure everyone appreciates your input to sort of put this together with a case study. It's really, really fantastic, so thank you.
Oh no, that's my pleasure. I've just seen actually, Claire, that there's another question posted into the chat from Cassie. About so it's off topic, but about advice for smaller universities that have perhaps struggled with engaging students in their Enactus team. I think, I can offer you some suggestions on this, Cassie, but again, if other people have thoughts, please do post them into the chat or unmute yourself and join the discussion. I think my advice when I've previously worked with smaller teams or universities that have been starting up an Enactus team has been to start relatively small, but to start with a project that will inspire the students. So get the students to come in and shape up an initial project, or even if you're kind of starting the team or reinvigorating the team, it might be that you could come with a project idea that you propose, but that's sufficiently broad and ill-defined that they can help to shape it and kind of take ownership of it. And I think that if you can do that, then it kind of, what happens is you get a core group of students who are engaged with it. They'll work with you on it because they have that ownership and ability to shape the project initially. And then it starts to attract other people in. It kind of becomes a bit magnetic, that other students will see the value that the core group of students are getting from the program. They'll see how enthusiastic and excited those students are about talking about the impact that they're making and the projects that they're running. And so it starts to grow and the message starts to spread across your institution. So I think the core of that is starting with a small group of students is fine, and in fact a good place to start, and then get them really engaged in a project, and think about how you promote and communicate that project, rather than necessarily the Enactus opportunity and the Enactus program. Because I think one of the things I'm often struck by when I talk to our students who are in Enactus is that they've not joined it because they want to put this on their CV. They've not joined the Enactus program because they want to build their skills, or they see this as a development opportunity for themselves. Often the first thing that they say when I ask them the question about why did you want to join Enactus, it's because they genuinely care about wanting to try and change the world and to make the world better, and to use the knowledge and skills that they get from their degree to be able to do that. And so I think sometimes if we promote Enactus as a program where you can come and run projects and build your CV and get new skills, actually that's not the most motivational thing for students. Whereas once they can start to see that actually those students who are in Enactus are running these projects that are having real benefit, real impact, they're starting to get recognition for that, then that becomes a motivator for more students to join, because they want to come and make a positive impact too. So I hope that helps as one suggestion. I'm happy to discuss it further, Cassie, if you've got any observations or questions on that. But maybe other people in the call want to offer advice as well.
I think one thing to add there, Cassie, is with BGU Lincoln, it has a very specific demographic of students, and I think understanding who it is, who your students are, and what might bring them into Enactus is also really, really valuable. I know that I think it's around 70% of the students are studying some form of education, so primary or secondary teaching, so helping them understand how they can develop projects about the things they're passionate about is a really good way to kind of like get their buy-in, but also spreading that word across lecturers as well. If they can promote that out to their different courses, that is also a really good way to kind of attract students in.
I think that's a great point, Claire, and I think so. We did some support work from Sheffield with Huddersfield when they were setting up their team a few years ago. I'm not sure whether Claire, is Phil on the call?
No, he's not.
Okay, so Phil Clegg from Huddersfield, when he was setting up his team, came to Sheffield and met with me and our senior people and with our team, and then to help him to get his team off the ground, our team went to Huddersfield and presented their national presentation and engaged with the students and kind of sold Enactus to them, if I can use that word, from their perspective. So it might be that, as Claire says, if you can identify a project area that you think your students might be passionate about, then perhaps having a look around within your region, if there are any other teams who have projects that are in similar kinds of areas, that you might perhaps be able to ask to come along and talk to your students and showcase the work that they've been doing, so that it makes it really real to the students what kind of impacts and projects they could run, rather than it just being an opportunity to create a project that perhaps feels a bit scary and a bit too kind of open until you start to see what those projects might look like in more detail.
Hi, Chris. So I can see that you've asked a question about where the other callers are. I can perhaps give you some idea from the individuals that I recognise. So we've got quite a nice geographic spread. We've got universities in Cardiff, Bristol, University of Greenwich representing here today, Manchester, Teesside, York, BGU Lincoln, Queen Mary in London. Please do feel free to pipe in with yours if I haven't mentioned it.
Thanks, Chris. I'm glad to see that you found the session useful. And yeah, I've made a note of your email address there so that we can be in touch and talk about opportunities next year for me to come and meet with your team. Yeah, I think that sounds good, Elaine. So there's a comment here from Elaine that she might change the focus and help the students to narrow down their ideas based on the strategy, just trying to maybe make it a bit less overwhelming for them. And I think, yeah, I think this can be another way to use that, is that I think the way I presented things today, what I was saying is about how we framed what our team was already doing and presented that as being aligned with the university strategic plan. But of course, you could come at this the other way around and say, actually, let's have a look at the strategy for the university and see what opportunities that might highlight to students for areas that they could work in. And I think as long as the students then still have the flexibility to choose things that they're passionate about within that, right, then that might be a useful way of framing and kind of drawing together that ideation phase where they're coming up with new project ideas. So I think we've addressed all the questions that were in the chat. Obviously, if you want to stay around and you have more questions, please add them there. If not, and I'm conscious that you're all really busy, and so might be moving on to other things at 2 o'clock. So if that's the case, thank you again for joining us today. I hope you have found it useful, and I hope that we'll see many of you in the new year at the face-to-face event that Mo is kindly hosting for us at Aston. And in the meantime, I hope you have a great Christmas break. I'm sure that we're all ready for that now and looking forward to having some downtime over that vacation period. So enjoy that, and we'll look forward to seeing many of you either on the next webinar, and we'll send the details of that around shortly, or at the face-to-face event in Aston.
Thanks again, Gary from Enactus UK. If there's no more questions, I'm now going to end the call. Thanks everyone for attending.
Thank you, Claire.